In Taiwan, the ruling party candidate Lai Ching-te has won the presidential election, giving his party, the DPP, an unprecedented third term. Lai took a comfortable lead early in the vote count, ahead of his nearest rival in the opposition KMT. China claims Taiwan as its territory and, in the run-up to the election, called Lai a dangerous separatist. The DPP champions Taiwan's separate identity and rejects Beijing's claims of sovereignty over the island. And for more on this, we can talk now to Bonnie Glaser, who is the Managing Director for the Indo-Pacific at the German Marshall Fund and joins us today from Washington, D.C. Bonnie, what does Lai Ching-te's win mean for Taiwan?
Well, first and foremost, it's a victory for Taiwan's democracy that despite China's attempts to interfere in the elections, that they did hold a legitimate election. Only 40% of Taiwan's voters cast their votes for Lai Ching-te, so 60% voted for the opposition. And that is an expression of dissatisfaction to some extent in current policies. But nonetheless, I expect that there will be consistency, especially in foreign policy. That means approach to China, to the United States, and to Europe. I do think that Taiwan's partnership with the world, with democracies, will remain very strong.
And you mentioned continuity in foreign policy. Lai Ching-te has said he vows to defend Taiwan from what he calls China's intimidation. What has Beijing's initial reaction been to his victory?
Well, Beijing expected Lai Ching-te to win, and so they were well prepared. The initial reaction, in my view, is relatively moderate. China reiterated statements that it has said for some time, and the emphasis was on warning against separatist activities and foreign interference. That particularly means the United States. The statement from the Taiwan Affairs Office in Beijing also reiterated that reunification is inevitable. And this, of course, was a statement made by Xi Jinping in his New Year's address, where he said that reunification is a historical inevitability. So once again, this is consistent with prior statements.
And if we could just go to Washington and involve the Americans in this, President Biden said after the vote that the U.S. does not support the independence of Taiwan. What does this mean?
Well, that's longstanding U.S. policy to not support Taiwan independence. I think restating that at this particular time was important to reduce the potential for a very strong reaction from Beijing. I think that does not call into question U.S. support for Taiwan, which I expect will remain rock solid.
And what do you think of the possibility or the risks of some kind of military escalation? In the past years and months, there has been a ratcheting up of military exercises in the region. Are things going to calm down now, or can we predict that far ahead?
I don't think that things will calm down. I expect that China will continue to put military pressure and growing economic pressure on Taiwan. That said, I do not expect China to use force in the near term. I think that China is interested in preserving the stability in the U.S.-China relationship that was achieved in the summit between Xi Jinping and President Joe Biden in their summit last November. I think Xi Jinping is focused on his economic troubles, the corruption in his military, and I do not think that he wants to take risks by using force against Taiwan at this point. That said, in the next 4 years or longer, there is a possibility that China could decide that it does need to use force against Taiwan, but that will depend in part on Lai Ching-te's policies toward Beijing, toward China, as well as U.S. policies, not only under the Biden administration, but also, of course, depending on who is the president in the United States next year.
Understood. Bonnie Glaser from the German Marshall Fund, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Taiwan now. And DW's chief international editor, Richard Walker, joins me from the governing DPP party headquarters in Taipei. Richard, great to see you. So tell us how Lai Ching-te and his party have reacted to their win.
Yeah, so Pablo, I mean, I have to set the scene here a little bit because, for the last several hours here at the DPP party's rally, the sound has been at absolutely deafening levels. This has been kind of rock concert atmosphere ever since it started to look like this party was going to come up on top in the presidency. So there was a huge amount of energy here in the crowd, a huge amount of excitement, and I think this is really interesting. Before William Lai, or Lai Ching-te as he's known in Chinese, before he even took to the stage behind me here to declare victory to the crowd, he went into the tent, even behind the stage, and spoke to the assembled international press. So a press conference came before the victory speech. I'm not sure I've seen that anywhere else in the world, but I think that is a sign of the seriousness with which the Taiwanese take kind of the careful communication to the outside world about what has happened here, and of course particularly careful communication towards the giant neighbour that they have just across the Taiwan Strait, China, which has of course been so threatening in the run-up to this election.
Well, Richard, actually, let's talk about China, because Lai has said he vows to defend Taiwan from China's, quote, intimidation. So how is Beijing likely to react to Lai's victory?
Yeah, so we're going to see in the coming days what the answer to that question is. But certainly William Lai's message in that press conference and also on the stage here was one of caution, of continuity, saying that he's committed to the status quo, which in his eyes means that Taiwan is an autonomous democracy and gets on with its own business. He said that this was Taiwan's choice to make, and essentially that Taiwan is demonstrating that it is committed to its own peace and democracy. But he did say towards the Chinese, we are ready to talk to you. We are ready to talk if no conditions are made on talking to you, and if we're treated with respect and equality. So the ball is pretty much in China's court here, but certainly the messaging coming from William Lai and his party, the DPP, is very much, we're committed to the status quo, we don't want to rock the boat. So we'll see in the coming days whether China reacts in some way. It may choose to wait until the inauguration, which is until May. This is also a quirk of the Taiwanese system. So the inauguration of the new president won't happen for a few months yet. They may choose to kind of really fire some sort of metaphorical or real warning shots around that time before his inauguration speech. But we'll see in the next couple of days what the Chinese decide to do about this, because one thing's for sure, they didn't want William Lai to win this election. They made that very clear.
Thanks, Richard, for your update and analysis. DW's Chief International Editor, Richard Walker, in Taipei for us.